All right, guys. So today we're picking up on a conversation or proceeding from the conversation that we had last week where we were talking about working with your buyers, with builders, and doing your buyer consultation and all these different things. So now we want to just dive into your buyer agency documents, and we just wanted to kind of unpack them for you. We have people that have done things for years and people do them different ways, but we want to make sure that everybody understands what those documents are intended to convey to the buyers, and make sure that we have all of the relevant information in there so that when you are filling out your buyer agency documents to get them signed after you finish that buyer consultation, you have everything covered and your buyer has a very good understanding, okay? So these documents are no strangers to us. We use them in every single real estate transaction, the understanding whom agents represent. This is the first one that we get our buyers to sign off on. And what it outlines for buyers is the roles of the various agents. So the seller's agent, which is the listing agent, the sub-agent, buyer's agent, dual agent. It represents all of the different agency types to our buyers. And it is very important. One of the things that's crucial for them to know is that if they are going on showings and they have not signed a buyer brokerage agreement, then that agent is a sub-agent of the seller. And that's something that I want to make sure that all of us know as well. So although that buyer may be a customer, if that buyer has not signed off on a buyer brokerage agreement, they need to understand that the agent who's working with them is a sub-agent of the seller. So the intention is to make sure that the buyers are represented. So the goal is to have them to enter into a buyer brokerage agreement with you so that you guys establish agency. And that is in the buyer's best interest all the way around the board, because that's when the fiduciary comes into play and all of those things. But it's very important for them to understand these roles up front. And I say that because with our information age, buyers going on to Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, or Redfin and all this kind of stuff, they sometimes will find homes and try to send them to you, or say, well, I'm just going to call the listing agent and have them to show me a home, or, just kind of hop from agent to agent. But we need to understand how crucial it is for them and in their best interest to have agency representation and not just moving from agent to agent. Does that make sense? And I won't pick on you guys too much today.
Yes.
Excellent. If you have something that you want to ask, I'll let you go ahead and take it off of mute and go ahead and ask. Sometimes when I'm in the presentation, I don't see the chat until I stop for a minute. So feel free, if you have a question, just go ahead and take it off mute to ask. All right? So that's the first document. Now, I want to point out that this document is for them to sign up front, but the agent does not need to sign off on this document unless the buyers refuse or unable to. So if they're unable to sign, or if they refuse to sign, this document is still required. It'll simply have an agent's signature there, opposed to the two buyers, the one or two buyers. Okay? So the next document, consent for dual agency, this is no stranger to us as well. So I'm going to move through both of these quickly so we can get down to the actual contract. So these documents are crucial. They're crucial for a couple of reasons. Number one, if your buyer doesn't sign off on consent for dual agency, then that means that if they wanted to purchase a property that's listed under Porterhouse, they wouldn't be able to do so. Not only wouldn't they be able to do so, but you wouldn't even have the authority to show them the property that's listed by Porterhouse if they didn't sign off on that consent for dual agency. So the dual agency piece doesn't pertain to the agents, it only pertains to the brokerage. So that's something that you want to make sure that they understand. And here's the part that I want to highlight down here. There are two signatures here intended very purposefully. This very first signature, which is above the affirmations of prior consent line, that's for them to sign when you get your buyer brokerage agreement signed. Below that line, where you see prior affirmation, this is when they've already seen the property and they know that the property is listed by Porterhouse, and now they're going into a second agreement to purchase a property that is listed by Porterhouse. That's when this line takes effect. That's when the property address is highlighted here, and that's when your sellers and your buyers are going to sign off on the document again. So if you ever had the question of whether or not this document needs to be executed more than once, yes, it does. So only where applicable. This top part is in all cases. This bottom part is only where applicable. Okay? Now, this next document is for those of you who are on teams or those of you that are team leaders. Hint, hint. Okay? This is your notification of dual agency within the team. It is only required for those members of teams or leaders of teams. This document, very similar to the dual agency document, simply outlines that there may be a financial benefit to your financial benefit to the agent for the buyer to purchase a property that's listed by another one of the team members. So because you guys are on the team, you can do kind of what you do as a brokerage, in that one member of the team can represent the buyer and the other member of the team can represent the seller, and that is totally allowable. And this is your disclosure in advance for that. All right. Now, here is the backbone of all of this. This is your buyer brokerage agreement, or your exclusive buyer tenant representation agreement. And yes, it is the same for buyers. Yes, it is the same for tenants. And yes, we do require it for all buyers as well as tenants. And you want to fill all of this information in here that you see, and you want to specify the authorization. So you put residential if they're looking for residential. If they're looking for commercial, they're looking for commercial. And it doesn't hurt to put any. So you can put residential, you can put commercial, or you can put any, but specify that information there. And the buyer agency terms, we usually give our buyers a year. Now, it usually, in most cases, doesn't take them a year, but we give them that amount of time. You have some people that get through the process in 30 to 45 days, and you have some people 6 months later, they're still in the process. But you want to be sure that you're protecting all of your hard work and everything that you've done on that buyer's behalf by giving them a reasonable, expiration period. And then this is a very important part of paragraph number 4, the terms of termination. All of our terms of termination should say mutual agreement in writing signed by both parties. This is very important to you as an agent. If you've worked with the buyer for 2 months and they've gone to settlement, perfect. If you've worked with the buyer for 6 months or even 2 months and they say, okay, well, now I want to move on to another agent, you need to not be surprised. So the goal is to have a mutual agreement. So they send you something in writing, an email or a letter, and you respond to them in writing, and you guys sign off on it. So it's to protect your agency relationships and not have people just be able to kind of, jump around at will. All right. Now, here's where we want to pay attention a little bit more. Buyers need to be aware that this is an exclusive buyer representation, and the buyer is supposed to furnish necessary financial documents to the agent, to the lender, and all of those things, and you have the right to be privy to those things, even if you don't need it, okay? Most of the time, we won't gather it because it's not necessary, but in the event that you did, you already have the ability to be privy to it. Now, these pieces right here are very important because buyers will ride around quite often, and they'll look at signs, or they'll go to builders, or they'll see it coming soon, and they will kind of let you know on the spot or after the fact. But these are conversations that you want to have with them in advance. If they see a sign on an advertisement for a property, per their buyer brokerage agreement and per your conversation with them, you've already advised them that if they see a sign on the property, that they are not to contact the seller or the seller's agent, but they are to reach out to you first and foremost, and you only, and allow you to then reach out to the corresponding parties on their behalf, okay? So this is a conversation that when you're going through this buyer brokerage agreement, you want to make sure that you point that out to them so that there's no ambiguity there. Because otherwise what you have, and this is something, whether it be fortunate or unfortunate, we get it quite often. In fact, I think I got 2 of these calls last week for one of the listings that we have, and both of them were buyers who reached out, just based on the yard sign that's on the listing, and that's great because that's how we get leads. But the difference in these buyers versus the other ones that are desired is that these buyers had agents, And that's a question that we have to ask every buyer and every seller. Are you currently working with an agent? Have you signed a buyer brokerage agreement, or have you signed a listing agreement? And these buyers both said yes. They had an agent, they had signed off on an agreement, but yet and still they were calling the listing agent to get information about the property. So you want to make sure that you have that conversation with your buyers. And what we like to convey to them is that any information that they give, if they're the buyer and they're giving information to the listing agent or the seller, any information that they give can and will be used to negotiate in their client's best interest. So you want to advise your buyers away from reaching out to the other agent. All right? New home builders and open houses. This can get more sticky than you think. Now, buyers, after they leave church on Sundays or after they finish doing their errands on Saturdays, oftentimes they will go around and try to find open houses and go see builders and all of these things. And this part is in your guys' contract very purposefully to let them know that just like they need to reach out to you when they see a yard sign, they need to reach out to you as well when they want to go see a builder or an open house or something, because the goal is for the other agent to know that you are representing them. Because if they go to an open house, then, and they haven't reached out to you to say, hey, Darlene, I'm going to an open house, that listing agent shows them around the property. Now you have an issue with procuring calls, because who was the real procuring cause of the sale? Was it the listing agent because they came to the open house unaccompanied, or was it you as their buyer's agent? So that's something that we really want to steer our buyers away from. And we can make it very easy for them. Mr. Porter, I want to call on you, but I don't want to catch you off guard. So I'm going to wait until later to ask my question. But this is a conversation that we've had, and it's been very successful with our buyers. When you're doing your buyer consultation with your buyer, you finish up, give them multiple copies of your business card, and also send them the electronic version of your business card as well. Because if they want to go to see a builder without you, or if they want to go to an open house without you, one of two things needs to happen. Either one, they need to, first, always, number one, they need to advise you in advance so that you can reach out to the agent who's hosting the open house or the builder's representative to let them know that that client is coming over, but they are represented by you. And you need to go through whatever registration process they have, but a simple email should suffice. So you send that email over to let them know, hey, my buyer, Mr. or Mrs. Green, they're coming by tomorrow, or they're on their way now. I'm not with them, but I just wanted to let you know that we are in an agency relationship. So you send that information over ahead of time so that that agent knows that you are sending them there and they are represented by you, so that you will not have any procuring cause issues, okay? Now, another thing that they can do, if they go to an open house or the builder without you, another thing they can do is when they have the information sheet for the buyers or the sign-in sheet for the buyers, that buyer can simply write down their agent's information. So instead of them writing Mr. or Mrs. Green, they can write Tasha Stone, Realtor, Porterhouse International Realty Group, and put your number down there. But buyers won't know to do that unless we have that conversation with them. So we need to make sure that these parts of this buyer brokerage agreement are well understood by our buyers, because this is going to protect them throughout the process, and it's going to protect you and your commission. And some things, we could say, well, that seems to be, common knowledge, but please don't take that for granted, that's not common knowledge among buyers. So have those conversations, have solutions, provide those solutions for your buyers in advance. All right. So you're coming soon. This piece is pretty easy in that the property is coming soon, but it's not yet available to be seen. And once it is active, then you can show them those properties. Now, this is here because when you're sending buyers MLS listings, they may see those that are active. They may see the ones that are coming soon. They may see the ones that are active under contract. And you need to have a conversation with them in advance so they know which ones are active. They need to know which ones are coming soon. And they also need to know which ones are active under contract and exactly what that means. Because if they are coming soon, then they can't schedule a tour for the property until it becomes active. So have that conversation with them so that they'll know, hey, this is coming soon, and it'll actually show the active date in the listing. And if it doesn't, you simply reach out to the listing agent and you ask them when that property will be made available. Otherwise, you'll have a buyer who's saying, hey, Curtis, I need to see this property tomorrow, and then you go in there and you look and it says coming soon or CS. So explain those things to the buyer so they know what those expectations are. All right?
Can you, Mrs. Porter, can you explain the differences between, now active, we know they're active, you can see it. Coming soon, we know it's not there yet. But active under contract and pending, are they the same or are they different?
They are different, and I'm glad you asked because that's exactly where I was going.
Oh,
so with your active, no worries. With your active under contract means that they have a ratified contract on it, which still has contingencies to be met. So because that property has contingencies on it, the seller is still allowing showings and will take backup offers, but they have a ratified contract on that property. Okay? So explain that to the buyer so that they know, hey, this says AC or active under contract, but it's not, it's not fully active or fully available. It's very different. So if the property says active completely without it saying active under contract or without it saying pending, then that property is fully available. Okay? Now the difference in your pending, and buyers will ask you, they are going to see properties that say AC or active under contract, and they're going to see ones that are pending too. Pending means that it's under a fully ratified contract and all of the contingencies have been removed. So one is on its way to settlement and the other still has some components that need to be, taken out. So that could be an inspection, could be an appraisal, could be third-party approval, it could be any of those things. But just have that conversation with your buyer in advance because you're going to send them properties over for them to view, but I promise you they're going to go online and find properties that you didn't send. So just be aware, be prepared, and share that conversation or have that conversation with them in advance. All right? So as it pertains to locating properties, assisting a buyer, representing their interests, those are things that we all know. That's what our duty is. But this paragraph number 7, I want to highlight. My apologies. Don't know why it's not sharing up there, but I can ask Shalante to share the link with you so you can look at it on your phone. Okay? We have a few people in the office who are trying to get on to. My apologies there. So this piece, paragraph number 7, I want to make sure that we all have a full understanding of paragraph number 7, this brokerage compensation, because the buyer brokerage compensation for all of our buyers is 3%, okay? That $795 is your choice. That $795 is optional. Remember that Porterhouse only charges buyers and sellers $495. We've given you guys the benefit of being able to charge $695, $795, $895. We have some people who charge $995 as your brokerage fee. That's your choice, but it must include at least $495. So it must say 3% plus at the very minimum $495, and that's for all of our buyer brokerage agreements. Okay. Now that's irregardless as to what the seller is offering. You could go through a listing and the seller is offering 2%, 2.5%, 3%. Your compensation is established when that buyer hires you, not when you find the property and determine whether or not they're paying the full commission. You are due your full commission because of what is in this agreement. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that. All right? So another piece is the broker protection period. So in the event that the buyer ends up purchasing a property that you showed them and you were the procuring cause for, after your buyer brokerage agreement expires, you have a period in here that you want to ensure. Here I have, let me see if you guys can see what I'm looking at. Can you guys see that 180 days?
Yes.
Okay. So that gives you 6 months worth of protection, D. So if you've shown a buyer 123 Main Street, and now your buyer brokerage agreement expired, this month, and the buyer goes with another agent, and now that agent shows them 123 Main Street, and just like you were saying, Darlene, earlier, D, you were saying, hey, these things were on their non-negotiables list, or this was on the list of things that they didn't want. Well, if now they go back and say, okay, well, it didn't work for me when I was working with B, but now that I'm working with Tasha, or not a Porterhouse agent, of course, but now that I'm working with agent X, I'm willing to purchase this property. If that happens, then you have protection, because your buyer brokerage agreement says that buyer, for any property that you introduce them to, then you are due a fee for up to that 180 days.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Now, that being said, also, there's a clause in here, and this you want to make sure is filled out even if it doesn't take effect 90% of the time, because there are times when this will indeed take effect. And this piece is, in the event that a lease is executed, the compensation due to the broker is 1 month's rent plus your rental brokerage fee is $150. A minimum is what the brokerage charges. So for tenants, whether they be the landlord or the tenant on the rental side, the brokerage charges $150 as a brokerage fee to those clients. Now, your brokerage fee for leases can be anything above that, whatever you choose. The only thing is that you have to establish it in writing, and it has to be consistent. It has to be the same for all tenants. So if you say, okay, well, your brokerage fee for tenants is $350, that's your brokerage fee for tenants. But whatever that is, it needs to be listed right here. And 1 month's rent plus whatever that fee is. All right? Now, B, it talks about the fees being paid by the seller. And although the fees are paid by the seller, that does not create an agency relationship or a fiduciary with the seller in any way. All right? Now, 8A is very important, and I want to make sure that we all know this, because buyers can ask questions, and I want to make sure that you don't feel pressured in any way to answer things that are outside of your scope of licensing. Can you guys see my screen? It doesn't appear to be moving. I'm on 8A. Let me know if you can see 8A.
No.
Okay, let me see what's going on.
No, the screen keeps going in and out for me.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm looking at it too, and there appears to be a slight delay. So I'm gonna, okay, so there we go. All right, so for
I don't
8,
see anything.
can everybody else see 8?
Mine keeps going in and out. Like I just saw it, and now I don't see anything.
Okay. I am,
Maybe
how about
I'll
everybody else? Let me know if you guys are able to see it. Okay.
Okay.
I see 8 now. Now it's showing.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let's see. So 8A, I want to make sure that we are all comfortable with this paragraph, because sometimes you will feel pressure from buyers to answer questions that are outside of your scope of licensing. And you want to be wise enough to know not to do that. So 8A outlines the limitations of the broker's ability. In this paragraph, it says the buyer acknowledges that the broker is being retained solely as a real estate agent, not as an attorney, a tax advisor, lender, appraiser, surveyor, structural engineer, certified home inspector, or other professional service provider. Okay? So anytime your buyer has a question outside of your licensing, then you are to advise them to seek professional advice from those other professional service providers. Okay? There's some information that we have in our repertoire, and if we do give that information, you must give the disclaimer, hey, I'm not, a tax preparer. I don't practice law. I'm not a home inspector, X, Y, and Z, and you want to make sure that your buyer understands that.
Jasmine,
Okay.
I'm not seeing your screen.
No? Okay, let me
No.
figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not seeing
Okay.
it as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know right offhand. This platform has been phenomenal to us in so many ways. I'm grateful to have it. That being said, it doesn't come without its glitches. Let's see. I logged out to log back in so that I can start sharing again. Let's see. Okay, how about now?
Still not seeing it.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to give it just a second. It's doing something strange. It looks like it's trying to reconnect. I just logged out and I'm logging back in. But did anybody have any questions about those last few paragraphs that we went over?
No.
Okay, good. One second. Let me get back in here. But I'll give you guys just a story, if you will, with regards to a buyer that I had. And you share this information, and most of the time they'll listen. Every now and again, you'll get somebody that you share the information and they just don't take your advice. But that being said, I had a buyer that went to the builder, and I had been working with this buyer for about 3 months or so. They were working on their pre-approval, and this buyer got to a point where now they were able to be pre-approved, and we were following up, having a call, and all this good stuff. But then the buyer just decides spontaneously, spur of the moment, to go to a builder over the weekend. So the buyer goes to the builder over the weekend, visits the builder twice. So they have developed a rapport with the sales agent over there. The sales agent knows all of their business and knows exactly what they want and all of these things. So now the buyer calls me because they agreed to go in and do a contract with the builder's agent. They had chosen the house, they had shared all this information, and now they called me and they're panicking because they're like, well, we remember what we told you and we know that we went too far, but we want to pull you in before we go any further. So they call me and they're like, hey, we want to, we've been to this builder, we talked to the builder's agent a couple of times, and we told her that we were going to come in and do a contract, and we're ready to go ahead and write up a contract on this property, but we want to make sure that you're there to represent us in the contract. And I'm so glad that they did, because when I went to the builder with them the next day, it was kind of bittersweet, grateful that they did reach out to me and let me know, what their next steps were. But they had revealed so many different things to the builder's agent that I could have used to help negotiate a better deal for them, but there was no buffer. They had already spilled the beans. They spilled everything. So conversations that I would have had and things that I would have withheld and not shared, the builder's agent already knew. So it was just like, okay, I'm grateful that they called me and didn't do the contract without me, but I was just like, guys, we give this information because we're looking to protect them. And if they allow us to protect them, then it's in their best interest. So this is the information that we want to share. Can you guys, let me see what's going on, see if you can see what I'm saying.
I see your screen now.
We see your screen now.
Okay, good. All right. What do you guys see? Do you see the contract that we were on?
No. It just says your meeting should start in a few seconds.
Okay.
I was actually looking at the contract, but it is now gone again.
And now we see a little cartoon, and then there's you.
Oh, that cartoon is probably me.
Oh, that's you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let me go back. Well, I'm glad that you guys can see the screen. I'm not sure what's going on with this thing, but I'm going to continue because that the information that's in our buyer brokerage agreement, go back, read through it, ask questions, make sure that those various talking points are addressed with your buyer so that they know, okay, this is what Dee is telling me to do. This is the conversation that I had with Curtis, the conversation that I had with Shay, and there is a delay because on my end I have this up, but it's not showing you guys. There it is.
It's up now. There it is.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm going to restart the recording. All right, so back to what we were saying about the limitations of brokers' ability. Another piece that we want to make sure that they understand is 8B, representation of other buyers. You want to make sure that you share with them that you're working with them, they're your client, but you also have other buyers. So there's a potential that buyers may consider making an offer to purchase other properties, or you may have somebody that's competing on the same property, which we hope doesn't happen, but you are representing more than one buyer at a time, okay? So the buyer is consenting to the broker's representation of other buyers before, during, and after the expiration of this agreement. And this is something that won't necessarily need to be explained with some buyers, but you will from time to time have those buyers that think that because you represent them, they're the only buyer that you're representing, and they don't want you to show another buyer, a house that they may be interested in. So this information is very much there for all of our information as well as protection and for their advising too. All right. So subsequent offers, that information is there. So upon entering into a contract of sale or lease pursuant to the buyer agency agreement, the broker shall have no further obligation hereunder to produce any subsequent properties for the buyer. So if you find a property for that buyer, then you have no further obligation to procure any other properties for them. Now, sometimes we do, because when we're sending over an auto email, that auto email will oftentimes continue until the buyer goes to settlement or until the buyer gets under a ratified contract is actually what the intention is. But once that buyer gets under a ratified contract, you don't have to show them any more properties. You want to keep them focused. You want to keep them focused on the end goal, which is getting to settlement, and that just outlines it there for you, okay? So in the event that there was a third party, and we had this conversation when we were on Realty Talks yesterday, we were talking about working together as a team. So there's the other agent, or if you're working with the buyer, the seller needs something, the other agent needs something, of course you cannot provide them anything that employs your reason or your judgment in a sense. You can't counsel them in any type of way. But if it's simply a ministerial act, the other agent might need something for you. You know what I mean? So those small things like that are allowable. Now, this piece, we don't necessarily get into as much, but the buyer acknowledges the possibility that the seller or the seller's representative may not treat the existence of the terms and conditions the buyer's offer as confidential information. So we keep their information as confidential because we have a buyer brokerage agreement with them and they're the fiduciary, so we owe them confidentiality. But the seller or the seller's agent, they may not treat their information as confidential. And I'll give you guys a quick story. I remember one of our buyers, they were looking to purchase a property that was down in Akakeek. And I had a conversation with the agent, and the agent told me about the previous buyer who submitted an offer and told me about, the seller, and she was just giving me all of this information, and she didn't realize that after hearing a couple of stories from more than one person, we were able to kind of triangulate and pinpoint what was going on and who the person was and all those different things. And I even got a call from another agent on another listing that we had under a ratified contract with the buyer. The buyer pulled out of the contract within her contingency period for the inspection, and got a call from this other agent that says, hey, I had an offer from the buyer that I'm sure was the buyer who was under contract on your listing and was the same buyer who pulled out on you. And I listened to hear how she would have this information. She said when the buyer's agent sent over the offer for my listing, which is a few doors down from yours, she said it had your listing address on it. So I knew that they were kind of writing multiple offers on various properties to see which one would be accepted. She said, and I didn't realize at the time, she said, but that buyer was going back and forth negotiating with my seller. And I, for a couple of weeks, if you will, almost, while she was in the negotiation process for repairs with you guys. So information that we count as confidential, the other agent may not, the seller may not. So you want to make sure that we are aware of this, because something, if it gets out from the other agent, you can't warrant that. There's nothing that you can do. We hold their information as confidential because we have a fiduciary relationship, but the other person does not. Okay? So intracompany agent representation, if the buyer and the seller are both represented by a porterhouse, then those agents become intracompany agents. All right? Flood disclosures, this is not our information to provide to them. If the property is in a flood zone, this is not information that we warrant or guarantee in any type of way. We provide them with the information that's here, and they are to look that information up between them and their insurance company to determine whether or not they need flood insurance. Their insurance company actually won't give them the option. If it's in a flood area, their insurance company will find out, and they will simply include a flood insurance plan and just charge them for it. So that's not something that you have to worry about. We don't warrant that. All right? And that just kind of goes along the same vein. Now, as it pertains to repairs of the property, when the buyer or when a seller is working with a licensed agent and a buyer's purchasing a property with a licensed agent, the repairs are supposed to be done by a licensed professional. And this has changed since we first got in the business, because it did not have to be a licensed professional. That had to be something that you requested. So now that this is in the contract saying that the repairs have to be done by a duly licensed professional. All right? So legal construction, all of this information, this is something that you probably wouldn't have to get into as much with the buyers. So we can go more into that later. I want to come down and talk about the addenda that are going to be attached to this buyer brokerage agreement. So your understanding whom, of course, and then your consent for dual agency and your notification of dual agency within a team if you are on a team. If you have any special conditions, this is where you want to put your special conditions.
The screen is gone away from me.
Okay. I'm not sure why it is. That's the last page for it, so we'll continue to, I'm going to see if I can get it to reshare with you guys. But that last page, you want to make sure that you sign off on that buyer brokerage agreement as well as your buyers. So you want to make sure, just like you ratify a contract with everybody's signatures, you want to make sure that you ratify that one.
What number is that, Jasmine?
That's the very last paragraph in the buyer brokerage agreement.
Is it under like 10 or 12 or? Because we can't see it.
So I just closed it out because it's going out and I don't know why it's doing that. I can look really quickly and see what paragraph that is for you.
Okay.
But it'll be easy for you to find, no worries, because it's the very last paragraph in your buyer brokerage agreement. So there's nothing after that there. Let me open it up and see which one it is for you. So this is paragraph number, One quick second. Okay, great. It's paragraph number 13.
Thank you.
You got it. So that is information that you want to cover. So we're going to be going through doing your buyer consultations and all that good stuff, and there's so much meat in there that you want to make sure they understand. But these talking points are things that you want to make sure that your buyer understands as well, because they will make for a smooth transaction or a rocky transaction. So you just want to make sure that you know those things, that you're comfortable and familiar with that language, and you can convey it in a way that helps the buyer to feel at ease and informed in advance. Any questions?
No.
All right. Now, the rest of the contract, I would not keep you guys because it's 127. I'm going to let us log off in a minute because that's going to require a little bit more time for us to go into. So we'll start on that one next week. Let's see. There we are. So now you can see me and you can see my picture. So does anybody have any questions or any comments or anything with regards to that buyer brokerage agreement and the content?
No, I don't.
Okay, great. So there's another thing that I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about. Your buyer brokerage agreement is for a term, so an extent of time. So we generally give our buyers a year. If you needed to give your buyer, 6 months, 9 months, that's your choice. But I would not give a buyer less than 6 months on the buyer brokerage agreement because too many things could happen to delay the process. And then you have to worry about whether or not it's going to expire before you can get them settled. Now, that being said, the buyer brokerage agreement encompasses, like we looked at, all of the purchases that fit the purchase type for that entire period of time. So if it is for residential, then it encompasses all of your residential properties. Now, I'm saying that on purpose because it's not per property, all right? So if you're working with a buyer and you've done an offer for them on property 123 Main Street, you don't need another buyer brokerage agreement for 456 Main Street, and you don't need another one for 789 Main Street. Your buyer brokerage agreement covers you and your agency relationship for all of the properties that that buyer wants to see and wants to put offers in and purchase within that time period. I want to make sure that that's clear to everybody. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Perfect. Now, let me pose this question to you guys. You've seen in your buyer brokerage agreement where you put your commission, and in your independent contractors agreement, it's outlined there too because the brokerage establishes the commission of 3%. Now, if you go to a property and the property says that they're paying the buyer agent 2.5%, what do?
You talk with your buyer to let them know in some gentle terms that they're responsible for any payment that the seller does not make.
Okay. Would anybody like to add to that?
Well,
So
you should have disclosed
Go
that.
ahead.
You should have told them about that at the buyer consultation, and then you just reiterate, like what Dee said. You just reiterate. Now you're at a property. Okay, so now remember when I told you, we get the seller to pay, my commission unless you're short. In this instance, they're only going to be paying 2.5%. So you're going to be responsible for the 0.5 that you'll pay actually at settlement. So you're not paying that to me now, but I just want to make you aware of that.
That's exactly right. Mr. Porter, I want you to articulate it for everybody the way that you do in your buyer consultation. Take yourself off mute, please. We can't hear you. So while you work on unmuting yourself, I'll just go ahead and share the way that Shay gives it in the buyer consultation. He talks to the buyers and he lets them know that his goal is going to be to get them as much money back from the seller as possible. He talks about having the seller to pay for their representation. So he's going to ask the seller for a full 3% to pay for their agent. He's going to ask the seller for 3% to pay for their closing costs, and he's going to see how much of that he can get for them. He even says, let's just use a round number and say by chance the buyer's purchase price is $400,000. If the buyer's purchase price is $400,000, then that's $12,000 for commission, $12,000 for the seller's concession. So that's $24,000. Shay will say, well, I'm going to ask the seller to give you $24,000 towards, you know, your buyer representation and towards your closing costs. He said, and if the seller, you know, is able to give us at least some of that, then that's money that doesn't have to come out of your pocket. So then when we get to a point where the seller is only paying 2.5%, he says, good news. I've got the seller to agree to pay 2.5% out of the 3% buyer agency commission. So now you only have to worry about the 0.5%. And when he phrases it like that, buyers really appreciate it because now they can see the big picture in that they essentially got representation for it was almost free to them. What it could have cost and what you do cost for your services is paid largely or totally by the seller. And if and when there is any small, you know, difference, then you want to present it to the buyer in the way that they see that this is a very small difference and look at what the seller did pay on your behalf. Okay? So that's one of the ways that we overcome that. And just like Curtis said, in your buyer consultation, you're already talking about it. If you walk through that consultation the way that it's presented, it's talking about all the fees in there. You know what I mean? And those bullet points, you have them in your head for reference in your total and the full 50-page guide. You know the information to share, and you just say, hey, this is what the fee is. The seller, we're going to ask them to pay it. And like Curtis said, prep them in the event that they have to pay any portion of it. All right, so I have another question. Okay, you get with the buyer, and the buyer says, okay, well, I don't want to pay, you know, say by chance your buyer brokerage agreement is $9.95. We have someone here whose buyer brokerage agreement is $9.95. They say, okay, well, I don't want to pay the $9.95 buyer brokerage fee up front. You know, not buyer brokerage fee, my apologies, the brokerage fee up front. First of all, my first question to you guys is, if you collect that fee up front, what purpose does that fee serve?
Well, it makes them have skin in the game, and they're going to be a lot more, you know, they're going to be a lot more ready to actually make a purchase because they've put $9.95 up front out the gate.
That's a very good point. What other purpose does it serve?
Compensates you for your time that you're going to be riding them around and showing them stuff on the non-negotiable list.
Yes, it does. So that's what it's for. It's skin in the game and to compensate you for your time. So as in terms of the brokerage fee portion, when you collect it up front, technically, what is it called? We call it a brokerage fee so that they can see it on, you know, the settlement and all that kind of stuff. But if you're collecting it up front, essentially, what is it? See, we can't hear you. I see your lips moving, but we can't hear you.
A retainer.
That's exactly what it is. Yes. So if you're collecting it up front, it's a retainer fee for you because it doesn't, the brokerage isn't taking any part of it. The brokerage, we give you guys that benefit of you turn it in and we get the full thing back to you. Like Dee said, to compensate you for your time. Like Curtis said, to be skin in the game. And like D2 said, as a retainer. So it's a benefit to you guys all the way around the board, and that really helped us to separate kind of the wheat from the chaff. And we talked about that before. When we started collecting those fees up front from our buyers, buyers became a lot more serious. They became a lot more serious, and they wanted to get through the process. All right? So then lastly, if you have a buyer that says, okay, well, you know, I'm willing to pay, you know, whatever your retainer fee is, you guys do understand that you get to choose, aside from the $4.95 that the brokerage is going to charge to the buyer or the seller. It's your choice as to whether or not you keep it at $4.95, take it up to $7.95, $9.95, $6.95. Everybody does understand that that is your choice, right? Okay. Whatever
Yes.
you charge one person, however, you have to keep that consistent, and you have to charge that for everybody. That's the only thing. And that is one of the things that we are bound by in real estate. Like, whatever your fee is, you have to be consistent and across the board, and everybody has to pay the same thing. You can't go back and forth with it. So that being said, if the buyer were to say, okay, well, you know, Darlene, I'm willing to pay your brokerage fee, but, you know, why do I have to pay it now? Or I don't want to pay it now. How do you handle that situation?
You talking to me? Was that a question,
Yes.
Jazz?
Yes.
You were
If your
saying, how
buyer's
do I
no
handle it
worries,
if they?
Yes. How do you handle it if they give you pushback and they say, you know, I don't mind paying your brokerage fee, but I don't want to pay it now? How do you handle that?
Well, the only way you can handle it is basically, I mean, because you want to get, you know, the sale is you explaining it to them that it's going to be coming out at the closing, and you know, at the table.
You got it. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hello.
And
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Y'all can hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now. There you are.
Good.
We can hear you
Hey,
now.
everybody. I was trying to be quiet for one day.
For
So
what
I like
reason?
the way
I don't
Curtis.
know.
I like the way Curtis explained yesterday in the working with buyers training. For those of us who want to working with buyers training, 11 o'clock on Wednesdays. 11 o'clock Wednesdays, working with buyers training. And so Curtis, tell them how we do it so that we don't have to wait till settlement.
Yeah, so essentially I look at it, you have three options. So if they don't want to pay the $7.95 up front, then during the buyer consultation, I'm letting them know that once we're ratified, we're going to need an actual certified cashier check for the EMD. And at that time, we're going to need the brokerage fee of $7.95. So they'll have to get two checks. If for any reason there's still pushback financially of them giving up, you know, paying the $7.95 at ratification, then I'll just let them know, you know, okay, you know, if you don't have it, I understand, but you will see it on your CD when we go to settlement. So, you know, you can pay it up front. You can pay it once you're ratified and you get your EMD check. You also get the admin fee check, or you're going to pay for it at settlement. So just kind of disclosing it, letting them know the whole way through. So, you know, it's kind of like you're letting them know, prepping them about it during the buyer consultation. So there's no real surprise. Either you can pay the $7.95 now, or once we're ratified, you know, like, okay, so I'm gonna need two checks. Remember I was telling you, we need the EMD and we need our admin fee. If there's pushback there, just let it know. No worries. You know, we're not gonna let that stop the transaction. We'll just collect it at the end when you actually get the keys to your new home. But you will see it on your CD as a admin fee for Porterhouse.
Now, if you do it the way Curtis is describing, you're going to probably be around 80% successful in getting it before settlement. And the reason why we definitely want you guys to get it before settlement is because once it goes to settlement on your settlement page, then it's factored in with the rest of the commission. So then you're not getting that true $7.95 up front. So we want to make sure that you get it in your hand way ahead of time so that you can use it the way you want to. Because once it's factored into all of the rest of the commission, then it's just depends on your commission split and deductions and all of that. But it's not like having that whole $7.95. It's like when you get something that gets taxed. We don't want to tax it. We want you to have it in your hand up front, because once we get it at commission, at the settlement time, it's just factored all in.
Do you guys hear that? We're constantly giving away money. We are constantly giving away money. So essentially what the owner of the company just told you is he would much rather that we benefit you guys and give you your full $7.95, which is why we allow you to collect it as a retainer, than for you to collect it at settlement, because at settlement it is commission, and commission is subject to your fee structure. So you guys should really thank the owner of your company, because we are just into giving away money, as you can
Porter
see.
for president.
It does not benefit
president.
it does not benefit us as a company to have you to get your $7.95 up front. It benefits you as an agent.
Porter for Mr. Porter for president.
Yeah, I keep telling y'all, broker, I don't know how we making money doing this. I still don't get it. I'm still waiting for the day when we start actually making money. But
He's so silly. You are
every
so
time
silly.
we get any little bit of money, then next thing you know, we got to add to the snacks. or
we just like giving away. We're givers.
Or Mrs. Porter wants to upgrade the website or upgrade this, and let's get some more furniture for our office, or let's get a studio in the office. I'm like, hold on. Anyway, that's our business. Never mind. I digress.
Well, our motto, Mr. Porter, is because you deserve the best. So we do deserve the best. Just so do you. So we thank you very much.
The best is expensive. I just want y'all to know.
Well, if you guys have any questions, let me know. If anybody, needs some clarity on any of those points, now's the time you're asked to ask your questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and do a soft close. So we probably got started around 12:45 or so, because we were giving everybody a chance to log on. So we are at that hour's time. So I'm going to go ahead and do a soft close now for anybody that needs to leave. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you got some wonderful information today. This will be in our video library, along with our other Porterhouse Realty Talks and working with buyers and other trainings that we've had. So any questions, let me know. Otherwise, you guys have a marvelous rest of the afternoon. Remember to be productive. Mr. Porter, did you have anything that you wanted to include before we go?
Let's get off this call before they start charging us more money for the Zoom call.
You're so silly. You guys are the best. Enjoy. Have a great rest of the afternoon. And like I said, if you guys want one of these, like you see on Mr. Porter, you see both of our images right there. If you want one of those, send me an email, send it to Porterhouse, info@porterhouserealtypros.com, and we'll have that created for you guys and shoot it over to you, okay?
All righty.
For free.
All right,
by
guys.
the way, it's free. That's free. See, that's another thing.
Yeah.
It's for free, right, Jasmine? See? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Here she go again, huh?
All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
You
All right.
too.
Have a great
All right,
day.
bye.
Bye-bye.